Greetings, fellow Empyreans. I am Ashtarothi, the voice of New Eden, and it is October 28th, YC127. This is the Eve Universe Show! Welcome, 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 guys. We actually have Zoria here with us today. Barely you can see her. Hold on. Let's just, can you? Yep. Hi. Who's a good extirpator of the posh losh? Yes, you are. Yes, you are. All right. So, shout out to John Green, completely unrelated to EVE Online, for his work on eradicating tuberculosis. Yes, I've been a big fan of the Vlogbrothers for a very long time. Both John Green and Hank Green are amazing people. Everybody should know who they are and support them and like everything. Hi, guys. So it is Tuesday, and it is the last, or it's the last week of the Crimson Harvest, which means it is the now promised extended thing for the track, so we can get a BPC. And, you know, there was a lot of talk about whether or not we were going to... Oh, sorry, before I jump into this, I want to just point out, for those of you who watch the recording of the stream in particular, I do often get this comment: why do streamers have this big block of time at the beginning, blah, 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 blah. It isn't to pad my numbers or anything like that. Trust me. If I could get more videos out under, you know, in the 20-minute mark instead of the 2-hour mark, that would probably be much better for me when it comes to YouTube. No, it's because these are live streamed. And so, you know, I start the stream. Now, some people come in ahead of time, but like, it's like when you play music in the theater, as you let people kind of shuffle in and take their seats, you get to say hi to some people. Some people prefer to like do their gifted subs during that time, so it doesn't become an interruption of this, you know, whatever. And then when those 2 songs are done, we get to jump into the show. So what I do is, in the comments below, we put in the timestamps. I don't always do the timestamps for all the videos because it's, you know, I've got a lot of other things to do during my day when I'm not streaming and preparing for the stream, blah, 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 blah. Should, but whatever. The point is that I do put in the timestamp for about the 6-minute and 50-second mark, which is about how long those 2 songs are. So you should be able to jump to that 650 mark via the bookmark, or just know to jump there. I apologize for those of you watching it afterwards. I can go back and edit it, but that takes time, and YouTube's tools are inconsistent. So that would require like downloading it, making an edit in like an editor, and then re-rendering it, which takes a while, especially with how long the videos are often. Anyways, yada, yada, yada. The point is, that's just how that works. And I just wanted to respond to this thing that keeps coming up at the beginning of my video. So that way, if you're one of those people that are frustrated and jumped in just at about this mark, that's your explanation why. Anywho, today is going to be a chill day. There's a lot going on in the world in general, in my life. You know, for those who watched the stream yesterday or whatever it was, you know, my son continues to struggle with school, and I continue to try to help him transition to becoming a teenager. My point is, I'm not here to make excuses, but my point here is that today I just want to chill out and play some EVE Online and hang out with you guys and talk about stuff. So, we're just going to do that. I have some thoughts to talk about when it comes to like the lore in general and EVE Online and all that stuff, but I really don't have very solid plans besides just kind of covering what the what today's patch is, etc., etc. So that's the not plan today. Just, you know, chill out, grab yourself a cup of coffee or whatever, and, you know, we're going to talk about EVE Online in like a less structured than normal kind of way. I do have some thoughts about the lore that I do want to chat about. But today, the Crimson Harvest intensifies. So this is the last week of the Crimson Harvest. Chill out, May. Oh, man. I love May. She's like the best troll character in any of those kinds of games. I digress. Today's about EVE Online. So this is the last week of the Crimson Harvest. We knew that this was coming. We knew that what it would do is extend the track and give us a Blood Raider BPC. Now, people got it into their heads that this would be an opportunity for CCP to introduce the new Blood Raider battlecruiser or destroyer in line with the pirate ships, pirate battlecruiser and battleship, battlecruiser that was introduced with the introduction of invasion or insurgencies with Havoc. That's what it was. You know, the idea was that they can now roll this strategy of introducing pirate destroyers and battlecruisers into the other empires, or the other pirate races, I should say, over time. They're talking about giving out BPCs. This would be a great time to put out this new BPC. I never bought that theory. Mostly because the idea of, like, if they were going to introduce a new ship as part of the reward track for this thing, they would have highlighted that a while, like at the beginning, I would have said, right? They certainly would have waited. The fact that first of all, the fact that they went through the entire Alliance tournament without talking about the Catalyst expansion during any of the major breaks that they had blows my mind. But, like, you could argue that the Alliance tournament guys don't have anything constructive to say about a mining and exploration expansion, so that's why they don't talk about it there. And you know what? Fair enough. But you know what AT commentators would love to have some time to talk about? The introduction of new destroyers and battlecruisers that won't be available this year, but might be available next year, and how that might affect the meta next year, because yada, yada, yada. It would have been great for them to talk about. And more importantly, like, keeping that under wraps, like having that be this thing that they wait until the last week to give that secret. Like, I don't know if it necessarily gives them anything. So I never really bought into this idea that this is how they were going to secretly, in the last second, reveal that they're doing these battle cruisers and destroyers. However, the fact that it just said BPC came to mind the idea that they're going to introduce, that people are going to get like a random one, right? That's probably what would happen. And that is basically what happened. Now, what they did do with this is actually the kind of the more exciting version of what I thought was going to happen, which is they actually, at least for some people, put in Molochs and Dagons. I guess poor Chimoshes, the Dreads, they don't get much love. But so the Moloch Blood Raider Titan and the Dagon Blood Raider Fax are are possible to get in the final reward box. Okay, so if we hop into the game real quick, hold on. Just wishful thinking. I mean, it could have been cool at the beginning, but like as we got through it, the fact that they weren't even teasing it meant that I didn't believe in it. I think it's still a cool idea. I think that it would have been a great opportunity for them to do it. I just didn't see the symbols, like the image. Oh, you can get the Chimosh? Hold on. Let me double check. Let's just read this real quick. Crimson Harvest reaches its blood-ridden pinnacle, and the clash between the Blood Raiders and the Order of St. Tetramon intensifies. So far... Oh, yeah, by the way, I didn't predict any of the other good news from today's expansion. So there's a lot of cool stuff that was announced today about this not expansion, but this final week of of Crimson Harvest that is actually really cool. So it's not just these better BPCs, but we'll get there. All right. So this is talking about like the stats of the story so far. So this is the first, two? Because it's a 3-week, almost 4-week event. Are we going to call it a 4-week event? So this is the first 3 weeks, I think. So we can see that more people sided with Tetramon than Blood Raiders, which is interesting. It is worth noting that the Blood Raider sites are easier to get the money out. Oh, cool. Yeah, if you like... I'm going to pause this for a second. And show off, like, Punch, who's one of, obviously our friendly skindustrialist, has this skin, the one that I've been showing off here. This is actually the less cool version of this skin. It looks fantastic. But this is the less cool version of the skin, and he is actually selling the more cool version of the skin on the ship that more people are using for this event. So, oh shoot, hold on. Where is it? All skins. It's a coercer, right? Yeah. So the Courser Navy issue, which is the cheaper version of how to, oh man, my camera's just going to be skippy sometimes when I'm in Eve. So the Courser Navy issue is the easier to get into, cheaper version, more practical. We'll call it the more practical version of the ship that I am, or like to run the sites. You can even run it as an alpha in the setup that I have on not Hobelix, Eve Workbench. But this skin is extremely pretty, and it's like light reactive colors. So this is currently available. If it's not available when you go get it, make sure to reach out to Punch to get him to print you up your own. I'm supposed to be paying him to get him one, or get one for the, because there's a version of this that has that same effect that I really want. Either way, I digress. I told you today isn't going to be structured. All right, so okay. In addition to that, we can see that, of course, more people have run Class 2s than Class 1s or Class 3s. I'm actually pretty happy to see how many people ran Class 1s. We have 136,000 Class 1s, 214,000 Class 2s, and 71,000 Class 3s. Obviously, Class 3s have to be in the most dangerous, or are in the, not in high sec. But Class 1 is mostly newer players, because people with experience and or money are going to probably be running the Class 2s. So the people running the Class 1s are like alphas or newer players or whatever, or just people like dabbling in it. And so the fact that there is so many Class 1s is actually a good sign, in my opinion. Anywho, trade alts. I mean, whatever, man. Still people playing the game. This is like the time when for 5 episodes. Look, eventually I am going to make that tanking video and the presidential election video. I promise, one of these years. Yes, we're getting there, Mila. Okay, as of today, site distribution across all of New Eden has expanded, with Class 3 biocybernetic incident sites now surfacing in high sec. So now we can do the best biosecurity sites in high sec for the last week. And the Frontline base and Blood Gauntlet sites can now also be found in the low sec constellations of Samu, Yayal, and Head. So the tier 2 combat sites are not coming to high sec, but they've basically doubled the number of constellations that they can be found in. Whereas now all 3 of the biocybernetic incident sites are going to be found in high sec. So hopefully today we're going to be running a couple of the biosecurity sites, which is why I have it ready to go with our peld and everything once we get to this, where we will be running those sites, assuming that they're not completely swarmed. We'll see. We'll find out. Who knows? All right. So the seasonal reward track has been extended, bringing new items and final reward crate containing at least a blueprint for any available Blood Raider ship, with the most fortunate capsuleers landing the fabled Dagon or Moloch. So this only says Dagon and Moloch. So until somebody actually says that they've gotten the Chemosh, like the fact that they added it to Hobelix doesn't matter, because the person that added this to Hobelix could have just been given the task to add 1 for each ship, with the idea that like later on they could just decide for one of these to not be part of this. Like they can always change the ratios in which this thing spawns one of these things. And so if they don't want the Chemosh to be dropped for whatever reason, they just set it to 0. So unless we can find a Reddit post or somewhere where people have evidence that it's dropping the Chemosh right now, it explicitly, or not explicitly, it doesn't say it doesn't drop the Chemosh, but like it's not shown here, it's not shown here. So the marketing team either doesn't know the Chemosh exists or it's not dropping. Both are possible, by the way. I don't want to make this sound like, oh, I don't. I'm just saying both of those are possible. That's my prediction. Have you tried the Mecha Ball in Class 3 yet? No, not at all. That's what today's about. We don't have an election because Celis Agard is secretly converted to join the Blood Raiders. That's a, of all of the conspiracy theories, that's probably the one with the least amount of backing. Retribution worked fine in Class 3 at the beginning of the month. Yeah, I mean, yes. Jamosha's just a coffin ship anyways. Yeah, I want a Dagon BPC so bad. Hey, Drazer. Okay. So, keep unlocking rewards on the challenge track to claim it before the harvest ends at 11 UTC on the 4th of November. Thank you, CCP, for being specific about details. We need this more. All right, the Deathglow Remnant skins return as standout prizes. This is a funny statement, all things considered. Attainable both through daily login rewards and along the seasonal track. Other daily rewards include skill points as well as Skinner design elements to forge your own blood-soaked aesthetic. Now, so first of all, I actually do not believe. Let's double check. Where does this go? Here we go. The daily login campaign didn't have anything added to it. Now, here's the weird thing. I apparently lost time. That's how crazy things have been. So I missed the... I'm actually almost about to miss my skill points. But I don't... Yeah, they didn't put anything new here at all. They are calling attention to the things that they've already given away. Right? They didn't change this at all, I don't think. We could go back to my original video to see, but I don't think so. They're just talking about what's already there. But the reward track is really interesting. I'll say that. Let's go look at the reward track. So now you have to earn a total of 1350 points. So that means that you have to do 450 more points, which is half the track if you had already maxed your track prior to this. And for your efforts, you will get 100,000 skill points and that Blood Raider crate, BPC crate, which will have at least one BPC, which could be a Moloch. That's good to know, Crypto. Yeah, a lot of people like it. I just wanted to explain it for everybody, for the people that are like, why do streamers do this? This is why. Yeah, it's 15 of the... Yeah, it's about 15 of the sites, of the destroyer sites, frigate destroyer sites, because they're 30 points each. But, like, this reward is bonkers. And they do this every once in a while. I don't know why they do this. I mean, whatever, cool. Like, it feels almost like a meme to me. There's going to be at least one person who completes this reward track, gets the Moloch BPC, builds it, and then uses this skin and feels really cool about it, because the only real way to get this skin for the next year is by completing this track. So it kind of shows like, hey, this Moloch is from doing this, ha, right? Which, like, first of all, cool story, bro. Second of all, does that mean that every single person in the entire like game that completes this reward track should have this skin just so that one person can feel special about it? Like 99.95% of the people that complete this reward track will never apply this skin to a ship. They do keep on doing this where, like, the final reward, they're like, oh yeah, you know, it's the apex, so we need to put the big cool ship. But let's just say the people that fly Molochs are not earning the points to get this skin, and the people that get this skin aren't going to fly Molochs, at least not for very long. So that's why, like, in the description, when they talk about how the Deathglow Remnant, like in this framing, the Deathglow Remnant skin is a standout prize. Well, but in the area of new rewards, right? So, but the only new reward is the Moloch one. So congratulations, guys. You get the standout prize of a skin you don't care about for a ship you almost certainly will never see or fly. Look, and that's going to be kind of one of my, like, that. I'm always torn when it comes to, like, the way things work, because, like, when I talk to other EVE players, especially bitter vets, it's instinctive to almost become a white knight because their arguments are often invalid in some way, right? You can fly in a singularity. True. When it's open. But like Eve is, in my opinion, in a better state than it ever has been before. And CCP is doing better in a lot of ways when it comes to how Eve is managed and how Eve is developed. The problem is that, like, it might be even a problem of improvement draws attention to the flaws, right? Like, people can have criticism of how invasions went down, or more importantly, how invasions wrapped up, and how much there was to do after invasions was taken away. You can criticize that, but invasions was a pretty crazy experiment, a anomaly against the normal way of running things, and represented a significant increase in the quality of content. There's a reason why so many people got into it. There's a reason why it was a runaway popularity while it was happening. In fact, it was significantly more popular than even CCP expected it to be. But there's like, CCP is doing significantly better as a company, but I have said this many, many times before, that EVE Online is a game that in many ways succeeds in spite of CCP's efforts, not because of them. And so, like, there's a lot of things where it's like, CCP isn't wrong for not doing things in certain ways, or bad. It's not bad, but like, there's so much more potential there for them if they just do little things. And that's always been like the thing that frustrates me, is that, like, simultaneously I want to, like, critique what they're doing, because I feel like there are simple things that get missed that would go a long ways to building lasting meaning in the universe and people's, like, relationship to it. While at the same time, a lot of the criticism that gets leveled at CCP and at the game are largely unfair or ill-informed. So, you know, it's always a difficult balancing act to judge that. So, but at the same time, like, so I can say, like, this event has been wildly successful. Oh my God, it begins. I'm joking. Never mind. That was nothing. All right. So, okay. So I can say, you know, that this event has been a significant improvement, both in how CCP manages the event. You know, they did a lot of things right in this one. One of the things I really like is that they took that idea from the Drifter Crisis, of the fact that it will, like, at the very end become way cooler. In a lot of ways, this escalation mirrors the Drifter escalation, with the one big lesson that they learned was how to communicate it, right? They gave us just enough information to kind of create some buzz, but not enough. I guess we still ran with it a little bit far when it comes to what the BPCs might be, but that's almost like a fun level. Whereas with the Drifter Crisis, they set the mystery actually ended up setting us up for disappointment, whereas in this case, the disappointment gets a little bit stunted by the fact that people like me can be like, well, of course they weren't going to do that. Whereas with the Drifter Crisis, they really set up that something crazy could happen, right? So they got better at communicating what they were going to do, even though the Drifter Crisis and the Blood Raider, like, amplification ending idea happened very similar in the same way. Oh, I haven't even gotten to the best news about this event. Yeah, cool. The sites are everywhere. That's fine for everybody. Congratulations. There's going to be more sites. Woo, that's awesome. This makes me really happy. Like, I was like, no, they're not going to introduce new battle cruisers or whatever, or destroyers. I did not expect them to actually rebalance the Blood Raider ship line. Now, the Balgorn is amazing. We don't need to worry about the Balgorn. But the Kruger and Ashimu, well, okay. The Kruger is pretty cool. Like, it's very niche. Did they say they were? Hold on. Did they say they were? Okay, hold on. Hold on. You might be right. There it is. Did they actually warn us that they were going to buff him? And I just, like, memory hold that? Because it could be. I don't... It's possible. Would not be the first time that Wizard casually corrected me. Crimson Harvest is here. Final week. Intensifies. Incident sites. Escalating conflict. Upwell horror. 50% implant drops. Hack for extra rewards. Packs. What are you talking about? When did they say it? Did they actually say it, or is it in the introduction post? Whose side will you? I don't think they were like, "Hey, we're gonna buff the Ashimu just after the Alliance tournament," because I would have remembered talking about. I would have talked about that. Research gone wrong. Blood Raider sites reap the rewards. No. Either way, okay. I'm gonna go with didn't. I was unaware that they were going to do this. I will start with that. So there is a ship balance pass. Maybe you're memory holding it. That's, well, I mean, whatever. That's interesting. Either way, I didn't, because like I said, if I had seen that, I would have pointed out that this was happening right after the Alliance tournament, because like the Ashimu was a big deal in the Alliance tournament. I'll say that. The Kruger is a decent ship. I have definitely met my fair share of dedicated Kruger pilots. I will say that I think that the Succubus often wins out more for people that want to fly like fancy frigates. But the Ashimu, I've wanted to fly the Ashimu for quite a bit. It's my namesake in a way. And I love how it looks. I love how it operates. But like the Kruger and the Ashimu, in my opinion, I've always wanted to be a Kruger and Ashimu enjoyer. But like small newts in particular, but even medium newts, their range is so short that anytime I'm using newts, I mean, obviously my newt Tristan, but the newt Tristan wants to stay at 0, and it's also cheap as hell, right? So if I'm going to be, and also like, it's always felt weird that my webs go out to 15, but my newts don't go out anywhere near to that. So really, like webbing is less about like controlling them and keeping, like long range webs in that scenario is less about keeping them at range, although it can still be. But you basically ignore, you either ignore the newting system of the ship completely, or the nossing system of the ship mostly completely, or you use, you don't use the webs as kind of a keep at range thing, because the newts have a difficult time. You use an Ashimu, or you use a Kruger to web your freighter. Dog, get yourself a Daredevil. I mean, I get why you would use a Kruger, but you know, like my point is that the long range web bonus of the Blood Raider frigate and cruiser has always felt really weird because of how short range newts and nosses, the other primary thing is, or that these ships do is. And so it's always been kind of frustrating to play them, especially since Amar proper does tend to play with these same kind of ideas, especially when it comes to newts. But the I thought the Ashimu was a popular tackle ship in armor skirmish comp, like in the AT. But like, why would you would you use an Ashimu over a Hugin or a Loki or a Rapier or a Loki or a Hack? Okay, I've flown a lot of small gang PvP. I don't know if I've ever encountered an Ashimu with functioning as an actual like heavy tackle or a comp. I just either way, the point is because they're also very expensive, right? So it would have to like if it's the curse is a ship in the game. Exactly. And that's the thing is that Amarr often have newt range bonuses that make them just very, very good, right? Like a good example of the balance of this is the Armageddon, it is the Armageddon, right? Hold on. So if we look at the Armageddon, we see we have bonuses to newts, optimal range and fall off, right? And drone damage. Whereas the Blood Raider version has their more powerful newts, the ability to use the Gnosis, which is cool, and that web range bonus, right? And so they have longer webs. But like the Blood Raiders don't have that newt bonus. So if you need the extremely ranged newts, which you often do, you're going to actually want to go with the Amarr one. This is not bad. This means that there's a reason to use both. There are situations where the long-range webs in combination with the newts and Gnosis is really, really good. And there are situations in which the long-range webs doesn't matter, but long-range newts are critical, right? And so both of these ships have a place in the game because of that and how they are balanced, right? Even without price. The problem is that like the you do have the other piece to this is that battleships don't have a whole lot of like the Tech 2 stuff. You do have the Black Ops, which again has a Newton Nos bonus for strength, but actually no, this one is strength, but not range. So, but this is a Blops, right? So you're basically saying your Blops can function kind of like it's not going to get the web bonuses or whatever of the Blood Raider ship, but it's a Blops, right? So, but the critical thing is that by the time the other thing that's key here is that by the time you get to here, the ranges for the newts and Gnosis start to make sense, right? So if we go to newts now, and we see like heavy energizer, neutralizer 1, medium energizer, neutralizer 1, and maybe I should just do Tech 2. You're right. I should just do Tech 2. I know I'm saying you're right, but I'm agreeing with myself. So if we look at the three things, we can see that the small energizing neutralizer 2 has only a 5 km optimal range and a 7,500 total before it hits its first fall off, which is pretty much when it stops being useful, which means a web, which if we go for a web has unmodified 10 kilometer range, right? So already even without a web range bonus, your webs are already going to be outranging your newts, which is the problem on that scale. However, by the time you get to heavy, you're going 20 kilometers unmodified. And so your heavy newts are going to be past your web of fire range without the web of fire having a bonus. So this is why this balance of power is already shifted from the battleship line versus the cruiser and frigate line. Because even with the medium neutralizer, right, already you have an issue where your medium neutralizer without, you know, is already past its optimal by the time you hit normal stasis webifier range. So if you're using an Ashimu to its most effectiveness and you're keeping them webbed out further, because the reason why you want a web or a scram range bonus is so that way you can web and or scram them while they can't a lot of the time, right? And so that way you can, like, if you can web them off at 12, then you can keep them webbed and they can't keep you webbed, or, you know, 13 or 14 or 15 or whatever it is, because they can always overheat, yada, yada, yada. Details are not that important. But the reason why you do these kinds of things in these kinds of ships is so that you can control the range and dictate that it's exactly at this range and it's slightly further than they're ready to fight at. You know, it's the same as like the Garmer. But the problem here is that if that's working it that way, then all of your Newton NOS bonuses, let's look at NOS. The battleship would use a grappler, right? No. That's actually, well, they would use a grappler and a web. Well, the Balgorn uses webs because the Balgorn web bonus doesn't count towards grapplers. What am I looking for? NOS. Really? Do I not? How do you spell? Is it NOS? Oh yeah, it's an F. Of course it's an F. So heavy NOS, medium NOS, small NOS. So the small NOS has the same optimal range. Medium NOS, yeah. So the NOSes have the same optimal ranges by default as the newts. So the same is true for NOSes. So the point here is that on a crewer frigate range, like if we open up the battleship, let's just do this. This is easy. Okay. If we put a web on this thing and we put a heavy NOS on this thing, we can see that the heavy NOS has an optimal range of 20 and reaches out to 30. That's cool. And the web reaches optimal range of 20. Does this thing even have a fall off? I don't think it does. It just stops, right? Yeah. So this goes out to 20. So both your NOS and your webs, optimal, go to 20. That makes these two bonuses work very well together. Now, you can extend your range of your webs quite a bit by officer modding, or not officer modding, but like faction. You can get webs that are almost twice as good as this, or at least half again as good as this. So you could get webs that go out to 30 kilometers or whatever unheated. And of course, webs bonuses, you know, these bonuses can get improved by things like links, right? So, you know, but the point is that the web and the newt are working in harmony in range together. This was not true with the Ashimu and the Kruger. Kind of when one bonus is working, the other bonus by definition isn't, because you can't be nosing them and webbing them at extended range at the same time, because that outranges your own nos. Which brings us finally to today's improvement, which is, if we go to HoboLeaks, we can see the only real difference is this new bonus applied. And so we can look at the actual change in the description to see that what got added was on the Amar Cruiser bonus, we gained 20% bonus to energy range and 10% bonus to fall off per Amar Cruiser skill level, which means this doubles your range and half again as much your fall off at maximum skill level. That is a big deal. That fixes everything that I just talked about when it comes to flying these ships. So, like, this is a big deal, especially since there's going to be a lot of extra copies of those blueprints coming out, right? So those of you who have Blood Raider net resonators by Blood Raider LP, now is the time to cash out your Blood Raider LP to build some Blood Raider ships. Probably. I don't know. My predictions for net resonator costs have been wrong almost 100% consistently. But if we look here now and we simulate this ship and we take a medium NOS, not investment advice, and a web, we can see that the medium NOS reaches out to 20 to 28, and the web reaches out to 20. Suddenly, this ship is a lot fucking scarier. Oh my god. You can sit at disruption range because you don't care that you're disrupted. Because if this thing can, you can run a micro warp drive because you're not going to have cap problems because you're using NOSes, not newts. At least most of them, right? So you're using a micro warp drive. They can't scram you because you're well outside of scram range. You're at like 18 kilometers. You're using lasers, beam lasers preferably, so you can project and they can't, probably. They are webbed, you are not. So you have absolute dictation of range. And you have a warp disruptor. And you can almost certainly overheat your web and burn out of range and warp away if you absolutely have to try to get away. This ship has a lot of possibilities now. So I do want to actually work on some fits for this thing at some point today, maybe, or soon, because like this thing sounds so cool now. The Krur is also now. Let's look at this. So if we go with a small energy newt, or a small energy NOS, and a web, we can see its web is, again, still 20 kilometers. And the newts are from 10 to 14, which is still so much better. Because remember that critical number is 10. So you're reading that 10 to 14. That means that you can be newting and nosing, and sure, you're a little bit into your fall off, but they are past their stage of effectiveness. You can have them neuted. They cannot have you. They would have to be overheating or have expensive webs to even be able to reach you. And again, Lynx makes all this crazier. So you can do this with double NOS, and then you can grab some like beam lasers. Deep beam lasers that'll fit. Small focused. Sure. Can this work? There we go. These things with Gleam will reach to not what I want. So we're going to go with, will Aurora work well? I mean, they're web to shit. Yeah, I could definitely use Aurora, but I want to see Aurora is 85. What about X-ray? That's getting better. But what about, hold on. Imperial Navy Standard, one of my favorite. Oh, okay. I'm you know what's cool about that? So not only, so you're not going to be able to NOS as well back at that stage because you're past your fall off at the 17 to 20 kilometer range, but also Standard is the lowest capacitor usage crystal. So when you're firing past your NOS range, you're using the least amount of cap. And then when you get closer with like ultraviolet, probably, right? Yeah, well, 14. Too bad there's like 6 systems that Blood Raiders control, and I think Brave Collective control the soft space on either side. Yep. I used to call the Ashimu the Trashimu due to its insane attributes a few patches ago. Yeah, and that's my point, is that their bonuses, it isn't that they're bad ships, it's that their bonuses conflicted with each other. And that's why the Balgorn was always really good, and the Ashimu was always kind of, oh, man, I wish that was better. You know? So we can go with 50 MN. No, not a 50 MN. We're doing a frigate, right? This is a frigate. So 5 MN. Restrained? Restrained. And then a second web? No. It's a warp disruptor, right? I mean, it'd be cool if somebody else could warp disruptor, but I mean, who cares? So now I have my 4 low slots. Brave no longer lives there. Yeah, that's true. It would be nice if they scattered some Blood Raider stations into other regions like how Serpentis have some in Curse. I mean, sure, but, you know, bitch to the Blood Raiders for being such insular pricks. I don't know. Like, what do you want? They own what they own. That's why they can do things like give away all these BPCs. That's actually kind of a cool idea. I'm a frat corp that is now an NPC Delve. Not sure what corp is going to do with this rebalance yet. Yeah, well, I'm just saying, like, the big key is a lot of people are going to have BPCs, but not net resonators. That's where my mind is about this. Okay, so what happens, guys, what happens if we hull tank the crewer? Does that work? We're gonna try that out, Punch, but I'm almost certainly sure it will. Do you think we can hull tank the crewer? I thought I was going to be working on an Ashimu. So, but if we hull tank the crewer, bulkheads. That's well, yeah, no, that could be okay. And then what? Heat sinks? Whoa. Heat sinks take a lot more CPU than I expected. Well, we could compact this because we don't need it to go 21. Right? We only need it to go, well, 20's fine. We don't want to compact that. We don't want to compact those. Can we compact this? Not good enough. It's quite a bit. Can we do 2 of these and a coprocessor? No? Unfortunate. What else am I going to put there? Compact my web? I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I would almost rather go the other direction. Let's go the other direction. Remember, this is a crew. This is a pirate faction frigate. The next highest is 54 mil. Dread Garissus the web? 48 mil. Aha! See? Now we're cooking. Is that it? 150 DPS. 18 points every 2.5. So what? What is that? 7 points every second times 2, 14 points every second. Is that enough? That's enough to crack some things, a lot of things. If you put an ancillary rep on it, dies to Garmer. Yeah, probably. But I don't think our standard should be beats Garmer. Maybe? It can web down the Garmer. It can definitely scare the Garmer. The thing is that I can also put in some drones. Okay, let's try Ancil. That was fun and all, but let's... What happens if it's an Ansil? I guess we could do both, too, right? Here's a question. What is the difference between a damage control and an energized membrane fitting-wise? We're going to look at that, and we're going to look at this, and we're going to see, as far as CPU is concerned, the damage control is less. That's definitely not what I wanted to see. Okay. Reactive? Reactive. Small faction needs should be cheap. You're right. Reactive armor hardener still puts me over on CPU by quite a bit. I need this. We could get a processor rig. Damage control does not get affected by the effect decay from other resist mods, so you have a third slot for resist and you want a multi-spectrum. Usually you can put a damage control. Yeah, I agree. Like usually, so what Fonsu used to say to me, and it makes sense, like they've done the math, like your first mod should be an energized, or a multi-spectrum. Your second mod should be a multi-spectrum. Your third mod should be a damage control with the way it works. But as far as like if you're wanting to reinforce your armor specifically. But I'm a big fan of the reactive. I'm probably one of the biggest fans of the reactive. So I think that this is actually going to help with that. So we could go with a rig, a processor rig, which is, nope, that's not right. Processor overclocking unit. 2 rigs? That sucks. All right, hold on. Processor overclocking unit. And that gives me almost no calibration left. All right. And that doesn't, I can't even do that. So if I compact damage control, or we could go with a non-energized membrane. Let's go with a let's see what a normal multi-spectrum or non-energized multi-spectrum looks like. That would be a coating? Is that good? Yeah. But what's the difference, though? What am I losing? 3,900 versus 4,000. Actually, not that bad. Okay. Go Dark Blood. It's only 10 million. Dark Blood, 16 million. I mean, yeah. Yep. So you can go like this and just go Dark Blood for thematic purposes, if nothing else. Also, somebody pointed out and is correct that blinged Nosses are not that hard to get. So we could look at... Well, now I am starting to stack enough of them. How much is this thing actually worth? 174? I mean, you know, how much do you care? So that's further range too. I think I'll stick to my Sentinel. Yeah. Sentinel's just an amazing ship. And also T2. What? Why is this not going on? There it is. All right. All right. And this makes it so that this range is 12 to 17. So that's perfect. That's brilliant. That makes this ammo perfect. And then we can also use drones. We're going to go with hobgoblins because we're webbing them down. And they could have a micro warp drive. Man, it'd be so cool if they could also be scrammed. Yeah. And now we can get rid of both of these. So that's super cool. So now we can look at, okay, what do we want to do? We can make our lasers a little better. We can make our resist profile a little bit better. We can make our reps rep more. Let's go look. There's no topic. Right now we're just playing around with what a career fit could look like now. It is going 3K, which is fun. We could get it to go faster. Is that the secret? Ooh, is that the answer? Make it go faster? Hold on. $33? $33? $35? And then that's better agility. Polycarbon rigs, polycarbon engine housings, 3486. What does this do again? Increases ship's velocity and maneuverability at expensive armor amount. I'm not a huge fan of at expensive armor amount, which is, of course, what this one's doing too. So you're going to want to limit those, but you do have this Ansil. It'd be better if you're still going with a I think I actually want to go Gleam. Can I go Gleam? I don't think I can go Gleam. Even if I go with like a turret extender. What is it? Ambient extension, right? Accuracy fall off? No. Locust coordinator. That's the one. So that makes it 8. And then, no, that's definitely not going to work. Damn it. Okay. So I'm definitely going to be using ultraviolet or X-ray. And this makes it hit 15 to 18, which is good. I think I go for resists now. I think I go kinetic explosive resists, right? Explosive armor reinforcer. Kinetic armor reinforcer. Those are... I might as well make those cool. Pack some drugs, it's relentless. Yep. So I still want to put not an accelerator, but a repair augmenter, right? We want to put a repair augmenter. That's the one that's a mount, right? Reduce the capacitor need for a ship remote. Oh, no, that's not it. That's remote repair augmenter. Herpaderpaderp. What? It's not the accelerator. It's the... Am I going crazy? Hold on. Is it the auxiliary nanopump? It's the auxiliary nanopump. I was getting that confused with the auxiliary other one, the fitting mod. So yes, this is the one that does a mount at the expense of increased power grid. So that should be fine. So let's go with small nanobot or auxiliary nanopump. That's what it is. Whew. And that will make my repairs stronger. So now I'm repping 41.6 hit points per second with a resist profile of 68, 58, 67, 65, preferring to fight at 12 to 14 kilometers, but webs out to 26. Can fight comfortably out to 20, wants to fight within 12 to 17. This feels like it could work. I think this is cool. Let's save it. Ash test from 10.28. We'll look at that later. Maybe we'll do a whole... Should I do a stream where we fly around in one of these? We'll just save it for me so that way I don't ruin anybody else's day. It is 240 million, with the biggest buy being that Dreadgurus' Stasis Webifier. So we might consider, especially since we don't actually need that extra range with the fitting that's done, it would probably be good to just swap it to... Dang it. It is worth noting that my my cap depletes too quickly now. Is it because of X-ray versus ultraviolet? It is. Let's take it into mid-mill later. Could be. All right. That was just a fun little experiment. Hopefully that gave you guys some insight into like fitting tactics for something blind. But let's go ahead and start running some sites. And see what we can see. I'm going to switch over to this view. And, all right. Oh, hold on. I was supposed to be moving my camera. There we go. Now my camera's a little bit higher. That should be good. Let's go ahead and get this started. If you're fighting within newt range, just go with compact. Yeah, but it's okay for your web and your disruptor to go a little bit further than your newt range, than your preferred combat range, so that way they can slip a little bit and you still be okay. Dang it. Yeah, earlier I looked and there was like 2 class 3 sites in the system with me. Now there's not. Of course there's not. Let's go ahead and go. See what we can find. And then I might actually need to go get more ammo. Did I just see that right? That's not great. 2,500 rounds. We'll see. Oh my God. Okay. We'll just get started. Oh, you guys can't see. There is 3 class 3 biosecurity sites or whatever, and none of them were open. So those of you who are stream sniping, make sure to rush here as fast as possible and ruin my day. We'll probably run one site with this mode because it has the Eldon up and everything, but then I might actually switch back to the other camera angle because it shows the I used to hide the sidebar because that's where the chats and stuff are, but now like there's so much useful information in the sidebar, it's hard for me to justify hiding or like, you know, covering it. Got to put the gutter somewhere. Here we go. So this is a class 3 site. Obviously testing this in the Mecha Ball on stream in low sec would have been very funny, but probably not very good for testing. So now that these are in high sec, I can test it live on stream. Oops. Oh, shoot. I need to drop my MTU. I know how to play this. I know how to do this. I promise. So one thing I was thinking about doing, we can do it after this site, probably. Remind me how you can set up your configuration to make this even easier. Oh. Hey, Zoria. She's still in my lap. Oh, they are starting to stack up, but that can happen, especially on shuttle waves, because you spend some extra time killing the shuttle. But my tank is obviously doing just fine, at least so far. Aw, did you just... I don't know if you just heard that, but my puppy just yawned. Oh, gosh. Hi. Oh, I definitely should have stopped. I did kind of fall behind because my puppy distracted me. Let's see if Zoria gets me killed. There's a newt. I got to get the shuttle, which is kind of crazy to do. But we're kind of a crazy guy. There's the shuttle dead. Now we're going to go after the newt. Now the newt's dead. Let's hope we can recover. Yeah, my cap's going to bitch for a while. We're at 160 seconds, so we still got plenty of time to catch up before bigger waves. There's another newt. I wonder if it would be worth having like one of the turret boosters running. For 50% shields, remember our maximum shield recharge is at 30%, so we're still not even in our final form, and we're cutting through these guys pretty quickly. We've got 100 seconds before the double wave, the first double wave. We're still not quite clearing them before the next wave shows up, though. Air daily goal completed. There's a shuttle. My tank is seeming to be pretty good at right around 50, although now it's at 48 now that I've said that. I can claim my reward. That is not the double wave, so I am falling behind. But again, kind of waiting for the double wave to clear, to blow it up, and that should clear off some of these extras as well when it happens. Still at 48% shields. Was that it? That was it? Oh no, that's the cruiser wave. Wait, what? Oh yeah, that's right. There's 2 cruiser waves. So we're going to kill that. Then we're going to keep going. We're at 39%. We're going to go after the cruiser next. 36%. 34%. And I'm scrammed, so that's fun. I need to keep that other one for the other wave. I'm at 30%. I got to get this cruiser down. 26%. That's my shield alarm, so that's terrible news. I got to get this Orthrus down, otherwise I die. He's down. Now let's see if I can be recovering or if I'm done. I'm going to just bookmark my MTU just in case. I don't know if I'm going to recover from this. I don't think I am. I think I have to go. Oh no, my chill has been broken. All right, well, that's fun. Let's figure out how we can rejigger this. Have I tried moving? I can't help but feel that moving is going to hurt me more than them. So, not this one. What can we do? How many points do you get per site? I haven't started. It's 30. You could theoretically do it still, sure. This doesn't have to be restrained, right? I guess it's okay for it to be. It's also okay for it to not be. How does that change things? 21 versus 20. That's like a 5% increase. Would that have made a big difference? Put another shield extender instead of that recharger? There is no recharger. What do you mean? Oh. There is no recharger. Yeah, that's true. We could also split guns. Yeah, it's an EM resistance, which I'm hesitant to get rid of. Although I'm not that hesitant to get rid of it. I think that might actually work. Let's go with that. How many extra points did they add in? 450. So if you had completed it before, you've got half again as much to do. Let's try that. I actually really like this idea. I don't think that there's anywhere nearby. Oh, heck is nearby. Well, I mean, nearby being a relative term, but let's go. I think that that's probably the best choice. Yeah, but I played around with this a lot. I think that extra 50% shield recharge rate is going to be ultimately better than the EM damage resistance bonus, because most of the damage that is actually going to be spooky, like the EM, all the ventures do EM, which is important, but also, you know, the most net, like the time I took the most damage was from the Garmer, and I don't think the Garmer does EM. We can check that real quick. Ravenous Garmer. No, not Garmer. Orthrus. They fire explosive. Yeah. I know people are trying to tell me, but so what I do is I look it up on HoboLeaks, the entry for the Orthrus. I see what missile type it shoots, and then you look up that missile type ID, and it ends up being Nova, so you know it's explosive. I guess you could theoretically, if you want to do it the easy way, we could just go and find the formidable Orthrus in HoboLeaks, copy the URL link, open up our notepad. And now we can see 100% explosive. Yay! Also, are these things, did these things change at all? I don't think so. They added a bunch of new Skinner stuff. What was it, yesterday? But no, they didn't change it. They're all unpublished still, so we can't see what they look like on ships. It looks like they're related to the expansion, though. So one of the things that I was thinking about this morning is like, because I think a lot about like how to tell the story of EVE Online, right? And I've been doing a lot of thinking recently about like where the narrative is, the fact that we have a new narrative team, and what that might mean, and what they've said about where they're going with the direction of things, along with the evidence of what we've seen, and kind of what to think about it all. One of the things I came up with today is like, you know, or one of the challenges I always run into is like how to tell the story. Honestly, a lot of the EVE story is told in moment-to-moment stuff, news headlines, vaguely remembered or posted about events that have some sort of evidence on like a forum post or something. You know, but it requires like work stitching together all of the pieces to kind of tell the story of what's happened. You know, this is part of what it's like to do lore exploration of a game that largely tells its story through like environmental storytelling and like a living role-playing universe where things happen in real time and not in like sit down, here's the story time. You have a passive jackdaw fit. I can always change to a different fit, but this is more about experimentation than anything. So as far as I'm concerned, I think that the narrative story of EVE Online, there's really two major plots and then minor plots. You tried all morning to make a mecha ball work. Well, we're going to give this a shot, and if it doesn't work, then we are sad. Are you the one that recommended the extender? Because like, did you try that? Is this just not going to work? No, not Henry was the one that recommended it. Yeah, you have dual extenders. Don't say that. So anyway, I think that because like there's all these different threads, you know, there's the presidential election that's going on, you know, and there's all these different things. Dual faction. I don't like what you're saying. Please stop saying it. Let me live in my delusions for like 10 more minutes. Yeah, thanks. Thanks. Here we go. So anyway, the two main stories as I see it is the precursor crisis, which is basically anything related to fallout from the first and second Jovian Empire. So that means everything from basically sleepers, drifters, and Triglavians. Do you have event resistance drugs? I could do those. I could do those. I don't. Yeah, because the ones that drop are just the turret booster. I was thinking about using one of the turret boosters just to see if I can kill things faster. Oh no, this expired. Wait, what? Oh. Tetramon resistance boosters, but that's armor resistance. That isn't going to help. Anti-disruptor, anti-drain. Yeah, I don't know. So we have the precursor crisis, which is everything involving wormhole space, drifters, Triglavians, Pochfin, the new tech that comes from these. And, you know, one of the major thread lines in this is the oh my god, my head just fell out. Oh, like the consequences of the new technology that the exposure to the precursors has revealed to the universe, and the subsequent damage to the nature, like the fundamental fabric of reality that is coming from that, right? Because we're seeing increasing consequences to the amount of like environmental damage we are doing to space-time with all of our mucking about. And by we, I mean everything from empires to players to Triglavians, with all of their, you know, weird tech, is obviously having unpredictable ramifications from space-time itself. And so everything that kind of is related to that. But really, like, the precursor crisis is surrounded around the fall of the Second Jovian Empire and the Shrouded Days. And this is everything from wormhole space to the rise of the Drifters to the rise of the Triglavians and everything past that. Yes. Well, I didn't read it that way, Wizard. I read it as they're not coming from where they should be coming from. Right? Because you're looking at the AEA data streams. And when they're analyzing the drifter crisis or the drifters, they say stability of local spatio-temporal environment deviates from archive reference data pertaining to. You're right, actually. No, you know what? I think your interpretation of that is better than my interpretation of that. Because he says they've failed to establish active locus of presence for the Jove Empire, the Chamber of Tyrants. So they can't find the original power structure that they would expect to from the Drifters if the Drifters were, in fact, the Second Jovian Empire, who they think they are. But then they also say that the stability of the spatial temporal environment deviates from archive reference data, which could very well explain why there's such a demand for exploration surveillance, why the initial phases of invasions was all about exploration and testing spacetime, because they had acknowledged the damage to spacetime that had already started. But I mean, that's all fair and fun, but the vast majority of the spacetime damage that I'm talking about has come from Triglavian technology and, you know, its resulting effects, right? Like metaliminal storms, all these kinds of things has to do with our manipulation of spacetime and the Triglavians' manipulation of spacetime. up to and including the formation of Pochfin, using the use of the Abyss, the use of filaments, etc., just poking tons of holes in between space-time. But I guess they could be pointing out that, like, this temporal destabilization can be represented by the Caroline Star / Apocrypha event, because those were damaging to space-time and caused the wormholes. So is it damage or repair? I mean, giant thing like holes being ripped open and other areas of space-time bleeding into our space-time, seemingly semi-randomly, does not feel like things are repairing and healing and going back to the way they should be. The only reason I know any of the lores from the Empyrean and Apocrypha era is because of your vids. I mean, that's fair. But yeah, that's my point, is that, like, I take a lot of responsibility, or I take a lot of, like, either way, like, I spent a lot of time thinking about how to tell the story, especially when we're talking about the presidential elections and all that stuff. So the Precursor Crisis is, in my opinion, kind of one major thread, because it is the destabilization catalyst. But there was another story that was kind of the main plot of EVE Online. And now, obviously, there's minor plots that relate to this. Each major empire has their own kind of minor plots about how they work. But ultimately, the story of EVE Online is the story of the Empyrean Age. The story of EVE Online is about the birth of the independent capsuleer class, the idea that these space immortals have almost godlike power and the military might of some of the largest empires. And the old guard, the human race, the baseliners, attempt to control, mitigate, use to their advantage, and, you know, continue to exist and be relevant in this world in which increasingly power is wielded by those who can best utilize this new class of immortal capsuleer, right? That's the story of EVE Online. It's the story of the Empyrean Age. And this is why, like, when CCP's lore team can talk about things like, well, we want the lore to focus on player stuff. And that, in my opinion, like, when they say that, it's not just like, oh, we want to make sure that, like, every time there's a big battle, you know about it or whatever. The point of those scope videos isn't necessarily just to be like, see, look how cool our players are. It does do that. But the critical thing here is that CCP, as the dungeon masters or story masters of EVE Online, like, their responsibility is the universe itself. Their narrative side of things is the universe. And so, like, the way that CCP's narrative team can best, like, accomplish their goal of trying to emphasize player stuff, agency, and still kind of tell their story from their side in a way that they can without, because, like, the alternative is them saying, like, what do you want them to do? Do you want them to fill in the gaps of the story behind the scenes for the player? No, because then they might actually, like, fill in the wrong gaps. Let the players' actions stand for themselves. CCP is responsible for the universe, not for the players. So the way that the narrative team can make the narrative about the players still is focus on how the universe reacts to what we are doing, right? Historically, one of the big problems about the story of EVE Online is that the empires are still bigger than us, right? A lot of the things that happen in EVE, the lore of EVE is bigger than the players. And therefore, it's more like something that is just like you stay caught up on rather than you shape, right? This is this constant complaint. Even when there's, like, an event that we're related to when it comes to the lore, if we can't shape it, then people get upset. But the idea is that, like, you're not going to stop the Gallente from building the Stargate, because if you F around and find out with the Gallente, they're going to smash your face in. You saw it with the amount of forces that they brought into Intaki. You're not going to stop them from building their Stargate, but what they're going to do is pay you to help them. And so people can take that offer and the recognition that the Gallente are willing to do, or attempt to stop those who are, but you're not going to prevent the gate from being built. Like, we are in a lot, like, we can influence things, but we're small drops in a large pond when it comes to a lot of, like, what is actually happening universe-wide. Even though we are space gods, the universe is a big place, and there's a lot of people out there, and we might be able to influence our own little thing a little bit, But like when the empires make a decision, they're doing their thing, and we can just choose whether or not we want to support it or, you know, stand up in defiance against it, right? So, but what we've seen over time is kind of a recognition of that. So what they can do is there's two different like ways, strategies that CCP can use to really execute on this. The first way, as I can see it, is the universe responding. Yeah, the empires do have capsuleers, but they don't have independent capsuleers because independent capsuleers are us and they're independent, which means if you work for the empires, it's through the faction warfare system. No offense to them, but the lore and story of what's going on in null players is boring even when there's big wars. Yes and no, but my point is that this is why the scope videos are so good for this place, because it's not just CCP highlighting what is happening in nullsec. It's not just an infographic that tells you how many people died in or how much damage ISK was lost in BTAC-R. It is explicitly the universe itself reacting to what players are doing. And that's the big critical key, is that if you're going to have this storytelling that is going to be based off the players, your biggest strategy is you have to watch carefully what players are doing and seeing what, if anything, you can dovetail off of. And those dovetailings can be very minor, right? You don't have to make some player action. You know, when Dutch Gunner goes and decides to bomb a couple of places in Pochfin, he's not asking for anything more than like a note in a New Eden News, right? That made him so happy. That was it. That's all. That's the amount of impact in the universe, that entire event that he was working on. Like, that was more than he could have dreamed for. He's not going to have an entire expansion based on the fact that he did that. He decided to do that thing that one day. But it does take CCP paying enough attention to know that there's this crazy guy named Dutch Gunner who's doing this weird thing where he's dropping bombs, EM bombs specifically, on a Pochfin structure, enough to put it in the New Eden News. It's small, but at the same time, it's super big, right? And things like player wars is something that the empires can have responses to, even if it's nervousness, even if it's awe, even if it's condemnation, right? One of the great pieces of like Templar 1 is in Templar 1, the main guy who is a capsuleer who was working for the Federation prior to the events of Templar 1, he ends up getting kind of kicked out of the Navy or running away from the Navy for various reasons. And through a sequence of events of the book ends up with Mordu's Legion, Moria Mordu, like talking to Moria Mordu, which is how we know so much about Mordu's great hats. But in this whole thing, he talks about his dreadnought and how he salvaged it from this big fight. And I believe, I'm reasonably sure that that big fight that he's referencing is a real fight that the players really did conduct back in like 2008 or whatever. And that is where Mordu happened to get his first dreadnought. That is the universe reacting to what we are doing. So that's how you can have a narrative story that highlights player stuff. The other way to do it is by having events and things that allow players to side with one side or the other and allow that to affect the storyline. So things like the Drifter Crisis, right? From now on, every step of the way, the fact that the Amar, the Mimitar, the Kaldari, Edencom, and the Trig won those drifter holes for the next 5 years plus, that is going to be a critical thing. The fact that the Galente didn't win any of them and the ramifications and the choices that they've made since then because of that, some of which we aren't even aware of yet. You know, like this is something just like the capture of the Arshat, you know, transmuter at the time, like that's a player thing. But, you know, over the course of the next year, 2 years, 5 years, like it's now a thing that has happened, and the ongoing story can react to that and build off of it and make it meaningful, right? Is there a lore reason why the empires haven't tried to expand into null space? No, not really. I mean, they're kind of really worried more about their own space. Like, you got to understand that like a lot of what we think of as null space and even low sec space and all these things are like colonies, right? These guys are not like, they leave the aggressive expansionism into nullsec to us most of the time, right? You're right. Actually, you know what? Always lemons. Good point. Caldari has some nullsec space. That is true. But like, that's part of the whole problem is that like nullsec is almost by definition a little bit outside of the reach of control of the empires, and has been for quite some time. That's why the nullsec guys have so much like authority out there. Remember, for like major organizations, traveling like this isn't like the easiest thing in the world either. We are the East India companies for the empire. But that's what I'm saying. Like, a lot of the big story about EVE Online is about the birth of the Capsuleers and what influence or how that changes, because the empires were already doing their own things, right? They've got their own stories. They've got their own machinations. And, you know, some of them are leveraging Capsuleers in different ways and experimenting with this. And some of them are responding in being, you know, more traditional, or like they're struggling to remain relevant and protect baseliners from Capsuleers, right? Like, that is the big secret here is that we are a huge threat to the baseliners. We are this Pandora's box monster that they're trying to use, because otherwise they realize that, like, if we get out of control, that's a big problem. I mean, like, even in their most highest level of disagreement, they can at least agree that they should work together to keep us under in check by Concord, right? So, you know, whatever. Either way, let's look at this and go boop, boop, and take this one and go like that, and then hit fit ship. Oh, hold on, close. We'll just X out all of these. I could just re-add the other two, but, you know, whatever. We'll do 5K ammo and then fit ship. Perfect. Buy all. Buy and fit. And let's go find a class 3 site. And then we can win, and I'll be happy. Or lose, and he'll be right. The level 3 did not go well. I mean, like, I was a little bit overwhelmed, pushed out in the end. So we made a change. And now we're going to see whether or not this works or not. I do strongly believe that, like, so the thing about storytelling in these kinds of games, it's just like kind of as a movie storyteller, right? Like, if you're making a movie within a series, you may not necessarily be the director from the previous movie, and you might not be the director for the next movie, right? That one's already open. So, like, a good example of this, the example that comes to mind that I'm thinking about is Saw. Okay. In the Saw movies, there's usually some sort of like thing at the very end. I think there was like a box at one point. And the idea is that, like, the person who puts the box into the movie or into the story doesn't actually know what's inside the box yet. It's just that there is a box. So that way a future storyteller can decide what makes sense to be in the box, and then it'll be like, oh my God, it was there the whole time, right? So you leave these potential hooks, knowing that the next group, or the, you know, or even you later or whatever, like in the next cycle, you'll be able to potentially use these mysteries as like resolutions for your story, right? And so in a lot of ways, like, you got to remember, when it comes to the lore, the actual plot of EVE Online, from CCP's point of view, is almost secondary, right? From a company point of view, they're making a piece of software So the lore is somewhere between a marketing tool and a framing device and like an ancillary component of the development that's going on. In other words, from their perspective, they have features and projects that they are working on. They have tickets and stuff that they're putting in, the changes they're making to the game, additions and features and stuff that they're putting into the game. And the lore serves to justify why these things are happening, right? And like I said, it can be a marketing thing too, right? You're using it as a way to tease things. You're using it as a way to keep things interesting. You're using it as a way to keep people invested. But ultimately, like, they didn't make EVE Online to tell to run the largest living sci-fi role-playing game, so that way they can turn that story into this like living universe story where they have DMs set up and it's all about how this story works, right? Like, what happens is that you have the people that do write the lore, like that's their job, but they get told what's happening. And so, like, one of the reasons why there wasn't a lot of follow-ups to Pochfin at first was because they were done with invasions, and that was like that was all the plan ever was to finish it, like invade, like the formation of Pochfin with the invasion as the selection mechanism for Pochfin, and then those guys went on to go do other things, other projects within the game, other areas of space, other features that needed to look at, and so. Like, yeah, the story, the Pochfin didn't just continue to have a whole bunch of attention and changes in life after the fact, because EVE Online isn't about Pochfin. Pochfin, and the story of Pochfin is almost like a subcomponent of the like the features that are coming up. But what they can do is they can leave a whole bunch of other mysterious pieces to it, like, oh, there's this gate that isn't open, and there's all these other things, and whatever, and like, do they know what happens? Maybe they do, but they don't necessarily have to at the moment, right? When we destroy all the structures in Pochfin, is that going to trigger some amazing event that they've been waiting for 5 years for us to do? Almost certainly not. But will they potentially use that with the next piece of the story because it's available? Maybe. It's not that they will do a Pochfin update if somebody kills the last structure in Pochfin. It's more that the next time they make a Pochfin update, they might use the excuse that the last structure in Pochfin is destroyed as a narrative point for why the thing that they're trying to do with Pochfin is happening, regardless of what that thing that's supposed to be happening to Pochfin is. So, yeah, and that's the thing, is that like a lot of those mysteries, like who the Triglavians really are, yada da da. I think that CCP knows those pieces of information. That stuff is written in a book somewhere that they refer to and they understand. Like, some of the mysteries, a lot of those bigger mystery pieces are solved. But what I'm saying is that like questions like, how will the 3 gates relate to Bouillon, if at all? That, like, they set up the idea of Bouillon. They set up that Pochfin is trying to cause Bouillon, or, ground Bouillon, and there's these anchors. So there's a lot of, like, logical inference that can be taken from it. But there's nothing that straight up says what it's going to mean, which means there are several feature possibilities. There are several opportunities for them to work it in and make it make sense that, like, okay, well, this is now what Bouillon is. This is what it has always meant. And this is how it relates to Pochfin. And this is why it's taken so long, right? Like, they can explain that potentially after the fact in a way. And so as a developer, you're going to leave things behind potentially for other people to pick up that may or may not ever pan out. A really good example of this that I think is true when it comes to like a story that's on cold, that's waiting for an opportunity potentially to jump in, is the EOM story, right? You have the dread attacks where, like, suddenly, all of these mercenary groups are attacking these critically politically sensitive areas of space in dreads to cause political issues. And then it turns out that it all happens to be a coordinated effort by the equilibrium of mankind. And it turns out that Chalkade, this character that's been kicking around for 5 years, is actually, and has been the entire time, an EOM operative. And it was EOM all along. And it turns out that the old leader of the EOM, who's supposed to have been dead for 150 years, is also still alive somehow, maybe. Hard to say, but we have evidence of that. And then they never addressed that ever again, right? They never went back to that story per se. I mean, they've maybe tiptoed towards it a couple times, but nothing that's like coherent enough that's jumping out at me. So like, wait, what's going on with the EOM then? Like, is that what's happening, right? Like, who was that dude? Was he an actual EOM guy? Do EOM have further plans of what they want to do? These are not, like, they kind of just left it there, but they also left it in such a way that these guys could show up anytime. If they wanted to, they could pick this up and suddenly now the EOM is working with the Deathless. If they wanted to pick it up and say, okay, well, guess what? Turns out that, you know, like, whatever, right? Like, that's just a hook that's left there for any future storyline and storyteller who wants to can just grab it and be like, oh yeah, this is what the EOM is now up to. So I don't know. I don't know if CCP even really firmly has an idea of what the EOM is up to right this second, and who that guy was, and how this relates to Artichaper. I do feel like there was that strong plot of like Artichaper and the Amarian Civil War, and like the potential that they are going to jump into Nullsec and try to take sovereignty in Nullsec from Stain. Like, there's a lot of really good evidence that that was a thing that was going on, and the CCP kind of just dropped it. Now, and this is the critical piece to it, because those pieces happened, and because the universe happens in real time, and there's a lot of exciting stuff that happens, so there's a lot of news that can go under the radar from us, to the point where they don't even have to do a New Eden News about it. It means that at any point in time, if they ever want to, they can be like, oh, and now Artichaper suddenly invading Stain. Like, they could do it any day because they've set that up, and then they've kind of left it there to simmer. So who knows? The goal is to let the players write the story now. Well, that's my point. And I've said this for a long time, which is that the best way to let the players write the story is to focus on how the universe responds, reacts to, and changes due to player choices. And like I've said for a long time, like when the universe isn't doing anything, then the player's actions don't actually matter, right? Like, so it's kind of interesting because, like, so World of Darkness was bought out by CCP, and a lot of World of Darkness narrative guys went over to CCP. And White Wolf, as a role-playing game, has kind of a different vibe than things like Dungeons and Dragons, right? Because like in Dungeons and Dragons, you are the dungeon master or the game master in other games. So, you know, you're kind of managing the world and telling the story, and everybody, it's kind of, there is a certain amount of like us versus them, or like players versus DM vibe going on in a lot of those games, especially since a lot of them are tactical board games with a story built around them. But World of Darkness is different. World of Darkness calls you the storyteller, and all of the rules of the game is really surrounded around this idea that the players and the storyteller are co-tellers of the story, right? And there's a certain amount of responsibility that comes from that. Hold on. So the difference here is that, like, if you pick up a campaign module for Dungeons and Dragons, it'll give you all the stat blocks. It'll tell you all the different stuff. It'll give you all of the different sites that they'll go to, who's there, what they're doing, etc., etc. I mean, there are definitely some that are more sandboxy than others. But overall, oh my God, I might just lose this shuttle. Nope, didn't. Haha. Hold on. Try not to die. Is that the 500 mark? Hold on. Let me focus on this for a second, and then somebody can remind me what the hell I was talking about. That was, I mean, you know, it was tight, but I think we're on the downward slope now. I've got 80 seconds. I don't think I have any more big waves. Maybe one more smaller wave, but I think I might be okay. There's my shuttle. That should be the last shuttle. Man, I really wish that sidebar would update more often. It's only updating like once every 20 seconds. It still says 522. It's been saying 522 for an unknown amount of time. I have no idea how much time I have left. I don't like that at all. 563. Okay. Just updated. What? It's going to be over soon, but it's also down to the last guy. I think I got it. We'll see how the squall goes. That's the last one piece. Yeah, no, when they open up the test server now, they usually let it open for the weekend. So you can do some experimentation. I think this is fine. Well, I think with so Jove will never be the main content. I think that like a lot of people, especially in 2015, were like clamoring for more Jovian stuff. I think the problem is that the Jovians in their current state are supposed to be like basically shadows of their former selves. What's really interesting about the Jovians are the older empires. So that's why I think CCP kind of shuffled away the current Jovians through like inheritance, and then really started focusing on the Drifters and then later the Triglavians, who really represent the more exciting pieces of Jovian culture. And of course, now the Deathless is just another example of like Jovian, second Jovian thought kind of being brought to the forefront. Seems fine to me. Certainly wasn't sketchy there at all. Passive Jaguar that can survive a full C2 spawn. I mean, like, that doesn't sound too unlikely. So yeah, I mean, I've said for a while, like, and CCP's kind of hinted at the idea that they like the idea, at least, that like, imagine, if you will, that EVE Online is actually a massive game of Stellaris with a bunch of NPCs for all of the different empires, right? Pirate and player Pirate and like the Empire empires, right? So each of them, their leadership, their organization, their forces are kind of playing their own game of Stellaris. Now they're several hundred years into Stellaris, so the boundaries are pretty well established or whatever, but like the AI have wants and needs, and they're developing and are trying to do their own things as each of the different leaders. And they're going to try to do stuff. And one of the big ways that they try to do stuff is through us, right? Engaging with us in order to make those changes. And so that makes what players do actually meaningful. So like going back to what I was talking about with D&D, like a campaign setting will be like, or a campaign, like not a campaign. Well, yeah, a campaign, like a book or whatever, will be like, okay, well, there's this encounter and there's this encounter and there's this place and there's these things and all that sort of stuff. And this is kind of like what is supposed to happen throughout the whole story. There's some of them that are more sandboxy, but really, you know, they're much more set up like, here's a story for you to participate in. Whereas in World of Darkness, a lot of times, like the stuff that's set up for World of Darkness for like storytellers is more like, here is what all of the different characters are trying to do. This is what is happening. And one of the interesting ways that I think it was in the Chicago World of Darkness book, the way that they portray it and the way I really like it when games portray things is like, if the players are not, if you take the players out of the game completely, this is what happens, right? This guy comes to power, he does this, he executes this person, blah, 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 blah. Like the whole story plays out of like, if there were no players, if the player characters were not part of the story, this is how the story will play out, including, you know, this betrayal, these things, you know, all these kind of stuff. That way, since there's a way that things would go if the players weren't there, now the players' actions can change those results, right? Right now, the players can do a bunch of stuff. They can rat a bunch of stuff. They can make a bunch of money. They can fight with each other. They can do all this cool stuff. But then it isn't going to matter at all. Like, unless CCP puts up a monument or something, like the fact that an area was a place of a big battle or that there was a big empire there at some point, like, unless there's somebody there to tell you that story, it doesn't actually, like, it just fades into the sand. But if the, like, by contrast, the people who fought over Arshat, that Edencom group that decided to buck the common wisdom and take a system back from liminality and fortify it, that group of people, those human players, changed the course of history for EVE Online, and from now on will have always have changed the course of history for EVE Online. But they could not have done that if it didn't matter. If there wasn't something that was going to happen that happened differently in a significant way because of their actions, and then those differences can then, you know, what is it? Butterfly effect their way outward. Like, that's how you make a living universe and also respect, like, have it be more about player action. Because remember, the base story is about how us as Capsuleers have changed the status quo and the norm for these empires, and it's shattered what little sense of stability that they had. That is the main story of EVE Online. And then the catalytic story to that, the story, okay, actually, no, better yet, Game of Thrones, right? Game of Thrones is two stories. You have the politics, the Seven Kingdoms, the Robert Baratheon and who's going to be the king, the Game of Thrones, right? That is one of the stories. And you can say that all of the stuff, all of the weddings, all of the war fighting, all of the spoilers and redacteds that come out of that, like all of that's part of that one story of these kingdoms struggling against each other for control and power, or these noble houses, rather, I should say, struggling for power over each other, based on what has happened before and what is happening now. That is one of the plots. That is one of the stories within Game of Thrones. The other story of Game of Thrones is the rise of the White Walker. And this is a completely separate story. While all of the politics are going on, this White Walker story is building up, right? There is all of the politics and all the intrigue that come from that, but then there's this X factor that does not give a shit about your politics whatsoever. That is something that people probably should band up together for, but because of how it interacts with the politics story, it creates this catalyst and conflict, right? So you have the White Walker story, and you have the Kingdom story. In EVE, we have the Precursor Crisis and the Empyrean Age, right? The Empyrean Age story, or at least, you know, everything that fell out from that. But I'm not just talking about the book. I'm talking about the story of the empires, how they relate to each other in a world that now has Empyreans in it. That story is the Seven Kingdoms, where in Game of Thrones, the death of the king was the catalytic event for the conflict, the struggle for power here in this case, the Empyreans, and therefore the introduction of a new weapon system or a new tool within these for these empires kind of represents that catalyst. Although you could argue the green fire, but I'm not going that deep into it. The point is that the precursor crisis serves kind of that separate, the same function of the White Walkers. It's very separate from everything else. It does not give a crap about your politics. The politics will exploit it whenever it can, and it's going to exploit the politics whenever it can. But it's about this thing that's bigger and older than all of them, that is growing and building and should be dealt with. So, like, that's the best way, in my opinion, to think about how the story is going, is those two separate plot tracks. Even though not separate because they interact with each other, but you get what I'm saying. It's like WoW is a theme park MMO where you just ride all the rides and leave at the end of the day. And Eve, we build the theme park just at slower pacing. Yeah, I mean, well, Eve definitely has theme park elements to it, but like the key here is that the critical thing, especially from a lore point of view, is that like WoW doesn't offer that extra chance, right? Like if WoW introduces a raid that allows you to go after the big bad guy. The Gallente election is going to happen. Some things are still bigger than us. Like when the raid comes out with the big bad guy, there is no question that the story will end with how the big bad guy was defeated. Because you are framed as the hero, like the plot. The story is very much told kind of, you get to participate in the story, but you're not writing the story. Even if you choose to not go kill the Lich King, the story's not going to acknowledge the fact that you didn't do that. Somebody else did, right? Whereas with Eve, that isn't always true. And at least the details can matter. And then the bigger bad guy was really the bad guy all along. Well, I mean, that's such a narrative conceit. I hardly even blame them. They're the ones, like, trying to keep alive a 20-year-old plot line that doesn't actually go anywhere. Even if you never did the raid, they'll assume you're the hero of the... Well, yes, you're right. Actually, the universe will just pretend like you did it. True. That's correct. But there's a lot of little things that make the story different between Eve and WoW that interact with that. I'll just say that. All right, hold on. Where are we going? What are we doing? Oh, is there another one? Let's see if we can do another class 2. It's kind of sketchy, man. I did not like how sketchy it was. In fact, I'm going to take that drug, the turret booster, and see if I can make that less sketchy then. And then we're going to go... What am I doing? Oh, yeah, I can just warp to it from here, can't I? Awesome. Like Final Fantasy? Okay, so the thing about Final Fantasy, though, here's a whole nother discussion. So, and while this is obviously true about WoW to a certain extent, too, because of the way that MMOs work, there is something to be said about the difference between Japanese JRPGs and standard RPGs, right? Like, it is kind of weird that we have a JRPG because like none of the other genres have this kind of thing where it's like, oh yeah, this is I don't know, a Russian walking simulator. Like you don't have those kinds of things. But with RPG, you have Western RPGs and JRPGs, and the reason why is actually because those two genres have different progenitors. They come from different places. The Western RPG comes from things like Dungeons and Dragons and, you know, tabletop RPGs of that ilk. And so Western RPGs tend to be about you creating your avatar in order to insert yourself into a world so you can experience and explore that world, right? That is what a lot of Western RPGs are about. JRPGs, on the other hand, actually take their root from visual storytelling, choose your own adventure stuff, right? So, you know, you have to choose your own adventure books, and then that eventually emerges in like the digital space with visual storytelling, like visual novels, and whatnot. And so that grows into JRPGs. So in JRPGs, it's not about you, the player, inserting yourself into the universe. It's about you experiencing a story of a different person, right? You are not Cloud or whatever. You are playing that character. And so, like, you don't get to choose how Cloud reacts to things a lot of the time. You're getting to experience it. But Cloud is Cloud. Cloud is who he is. It doesn't matter what you think he is. You're learning who Cloud is through that gameplay or through that story in the same way that you would learn about any character through a gameplay story. Whereas with the Western RPG, there's far more focus on you being that character. Maybe not like you isekaiing in or whatever, but like, as in like your character is the character. And so this is actually why you see a lot of people, you know, the Warrior of Light in Final Fantasy XIV behaves a very particular way. And sometimes people complain about that because they're like, my Warrior of Light wouldn't do that. And the problem is that it isn't your Warrior of Light, it's the Warrior of Light, and your character is being the Warrior of Light. And there are certain things that make you the Warrior of Light. And so you may not think it's worth your time to go and do all these menial tasks for all these other people, but that's why you, the player, aren't the Warrior of Light. You're playing the story of the Warrior of Light, and the Warrior of Light is a heroic character. And one of the things that heroes do is stop to take the time to help the poor person with their boxes or whatever. Even though the world's about to end, they're still going to take the time to help that commoner over there with their stupid little task as well, because they're the Warrior of Light, right? And so in World of Warcraft, you do get to kind of make your character, but you don't get to decide what victories you have. But in Final Fantasy, it really is like, it isn't really your character. It is the Warrior of Light. You can make some minor changes or like you keep it in your mind or make choices in the dialogue about how if your Warrior of Light happens to be snarky or not or whatever. But this is why your decisions in the game can't actually change how the game plays out, because you're not the one making the decisions. You're just going through the story. The main catalyst of the JRPG style is Wizardry and Ultima. Nope. Ultima is actually closer to Western RPG. Proper JRPGs came from like visual novel storytelling. Both Western RPGs and JRPGs can and do use chosen person tropes, but not always. There are JRPGs that don't use chosen one tropes. It's just most grand adventures use chosen one tropes. I mean, Skyrim is a JRPG with a chosen one trope. Ultima, or not Ultima, but Elder Scrolls kind of gets around that by not telling you who you are, but tells you who your title is, which is a little bit like the Warrior of Light, but not quite the same, because usually the title is a little bit more, I'm going to go with vague, you know, like the champion of, oh God, now I can't even remember its fucking name. Your role in, Oblivion. Kvatch? Yeah, champion of Kvatch. I think this might be me being crazy, but it feels like that turret bonus booster is doing a lot of work. It is also a tracking speed bonus. So yeah, this is that turret booster goes a long way. Yeah. Like Dragonborn. Dragonborn's a title, and it tells you a certain thing about it. Like you have a property that you can devour the souls of dragons that die near you. But it doesn't say anything about who you are as a person. The Warrior of Light tells you who you are as a person, you know? And it really is a chosen one trope. Not to go into too many spoilers, but, you know, there's a reason why you're the Warrior of Light. My point is that in JRPGs, often you are not the master of your own character, whereas in Western RPGs, you often are. You're an illegal border crosser who can eat dragon souls. It doesn't even, I mean, like, it hints at that, or it suggests toward that, but there is still an opening that you're not, you happen to be caught up at the border crossing when they scooped up everybody, including the main, like, dude that they've been hunting down, the leader of the resistance. So they probably, you just got scooped up in some, you could have been illegal, you could have been just a dude minding your own business going across the border crossing, and you just happen to be grabbed up and they're killing you before anybody can talk about it. Because you happen to be within close proximity of the head of the rebellion. No, my favorite like piece of like the Skyrim confusion is like so there's this fun fact. So there's like random encounters that can happen in Skyrim. We were supposed to talk about Eve today. Whatever. Somebody can remind me about Eve at some point. But in Skyrim, like there's these random events that can happen all over the place and at different times, and certain events can only happen after certain other events, like you've progressed certain ways through the plot line. But there's one random event that can happen at any time, which is you get jumped by a member of the Dark Brotherhood, and when you beat them, you can find a note that basically says that there's a hit out for you, your by name, and it says some poor dude wants this dude killed. And the problem is that then later on, when you join the Dark Brotherhood, there's nothing that like recognizes that happened, or that you do or did have a hit on you. So the idea that like there's evidence that that there is a ritual performed for the Dark Brotherhood specifically for you to get killed, and yet the Dark Brotherhood just kind of is okay with you joining and then going up the ranks, and nobody ever mentions the fact that that you were one of the people selected. That's odd. It's definitely like almost certainly a mistake, but definitely lots of theory crafters, or not theory crafters, but lore dudes have been able to key off that point to come up with all kinds of like conspiracies about the Dark Brotherhood, who's leading the Dark Brotherhood, because there's other pieces that lead into that conspiracy or whatever. But like, it's a fun piece of the game where it's probably a mistake. It's probably not intended to be read into, but it can be fun to read into it. Yes, actually, the mining booster is very strong, especially when boosted by other bonuses like Eden Com and headquarters bonuses. I think I have that lore mixed up. Which part? Oh. Almost lost the last shuttle. Hopefully we don't. Bleach Bone Limited. And we're done. Lock the squall and fire. Which part do you think I have mixed up? Immoral when you get attacked, and then you go to the Ivory to find out what you're marked and end up in fighting in the dark. Yes, I'm talking about Skyrim though. This is something that happens in Skyrim. You can go watch like a lot. There's a whole bunch of Fudge Muffet videos about it, or at least he mentions it in a bunch of them. The whole point is that the reason why this is so critical is because, and the reason why this matters is because it doesn't matter how far into the game that you are when this can happen. And so even the argument that you are dragonborn and therefore like that's why there's a hit out on you, that isn't even the explanation, because you can actually get this to happen before you've done anything in the game that's noteworthy. So the reason why, that's why I bring this up, because it's like the idea of like in Skyrim, they're very careful to like set up this scenario which explains why you're there without actually fucking god damn it. All right. Yeah, I mean, obviously the first step is to bookmark it, but now what? That's the question. Not just bookmark it. I can't just bookmark it. I still have to figure out what I'm going to do. Okay. Grab a... Yeah, but I'm like... Wait. Okay, so that's 36 jumps total. You want to come grab it, Malin? I'll throw it in the shared bookmark folder. There you go. You got 2 days. Are you in game yet? I don't see you in game yet. All right. But if you're but in Skyrim, you are not the target. If you find a kid trying to summon the Brotherhood and then fill his contract without actually being part of them, that's what angers them. Incorrect. Like I said, there's several videos by like the lore dudes in Skyrim. Like there is a thing that says your target is, and it shows your name, and it says some poor sap wants this dude killed, and that's completely separate from the actual sacrifice that you can find. No, my MTU is fine. Oh, I see what you're saying. I can keep it in the MTU? That could be a way to do it, but if I'm going to have somebody else come and scoop this up. That's pretty funny. I mean, it is only 33 million. All right, well. Just want to make sure I have that bookmark. Wait, what? Got it. My sensor overlay was off. Yep. All right. Just deploy a cargo container if there's one anywhere nearby. Yeah. I'm just gonna let Malin scoop this up. Is he logged in yet? Wait, is he? Are you guys coming? Is anybody coming? Yeah, I can. How long does a cargo container work? Okay. Well, let's keep on going then. Audit log will last for at least a month. Yeah. I don't need all that. He's got 2 hours. He's fine. Like I said, there's a, is it Fudge Muppet? There's one, like there's quite a few YouTubers on like that talk about like secrets of Skyrim and like the lore stuff. They talk about that one a lot. And I don't know anything about Morrowind's story, so I'm pretty sure I can't be confusing the two. I guess open backup opportunities. Oh, it's already started. And a Spitbull's in it, so let's just go ahead and keep going. Man, it takes Malin forever to log in. Oh, wait. There's now this one. Let's just go. Oh, shit. All right. It's fine. Wait, now... no, that's the one that's already being run. We're just going to keep going. Let's keep going. But yeah, the thing is that like, I think the Eve storyline has so much potential, and there's a lot of little ways that CCP can kind of key into it to get that potential. I mean, ultimately, the Precursor Crisis is the story of like an alien invasion. So like, in the same way of like XCOM or whatever, this idea of this like scary alien that we slowly have to figure out and that overwhelms us and stuff. But I mean, part of the problem is that, like I said, the story, it isn't story first. It's okay, well, this is what we're doing. How do we translate this into story? And that often is going to just be opportunistic, and we'll hop between different plots. And, you know, it makes it so that you can set up things for payoffs later, but you don't necessarily know if that payoff is going to be coming right away, or how long it's going to be, or even necessarily what it's going to look like. Is your colors off? I'm seeing it right. That's yes. They, as of today, there are Class 3 sites in HiSec. OMG, says Sargon. That's right. Confessors, Svipples. This ship can do Class 1s or Class 2s and Class 3s, which is kind of nice. I do strongly recommend, like, that Tier 3 turret booster has done a world of good, I would say. What else to talk about today? I've been having fun. It's always good to sometimes have these, like, I don't really have a solid plan of what to talk about. We can talk about whatever the hell we feel like talking about. feel like some of the best stuff comes from those. That said, I think tomorrow I'm going to spend time preparing to give a presentation about the presidential election. How do we players force the election? Well, that's the thing is that, like, of all things, the Gallente presidential election is probably the thing that the players have, like, the least influence on. I mean, it's not our democracy as much as we want to, like, lay claim to it or whatever for RP purposes. I mean, you can do protests, absolutely. And the CCP can use those if they want to in the story, or ignore it if they want to. All right, let's see. Do we have any? Nope. Okay, let's find a map. We'll just head there. That'll be fine. Just to give us somewhere to go. It is interesting because, like, the Gallente presidential election's not happening is a story. Like, it's one of those stories that, like, they can't really just let that go cold and then follow up on it later, like some of these other ones, right? Like, the Caldari took space in Nullsec. We're all waiting for the next shoe to drop with that, but we have no idea where that's going to go. But, like, the longer it goes without the presidential election, the more weird it is, right? So I think that it is something like they certainly cannot do anything. Now they have a problem where anything that the Gallente do, anything that happens that requires a reaction from the empires, therefore the Gallente are involved in it somehow. You know, it's always useful to, like, throw in, oh yeah, the president says this, blah, blah, blah says this, blah, blah, blah says this. But, like, it's going to become increasingly strange. You're not just going to be able to get away with that and be like, oh yeah, President Agard shakes their fist at the Mimitar's new action or whatever without, like, at some point addressing or making a big deal about, you know, what's happening. Or what's not happening, I suppose. All right, so there's a class 3 that's already open. But there's 2 other class 3s. So the class 3 that's open is at 1 AU, so it's these other 2. Remember, you can tell if a site is open by whether or not there's a beacon on the overview. So I was able to see that there's a beacon at 1 AU. So this site was already opened, and these other 2 sites were not already opened. So I picked one of the other sites and started heading that way. Let us clear the totals on Eld and go in. But I still say, if you're going to be doing class 3s, you're probably going to want to be doing them in the T3 cruisers. But, like, the Thrasher fleet issue, honestly, probably the Thrasher fleet issue is going to do better than the Mecha Ball. I'm still going to fly the Mecha Ball because I think it's fancy and I like any excuse to be able to fly it. But yeah, like, Courser Navy issue, Thrasher Navy issue, or Thrasher fleet issue rather, and whatnot. Those are going to be probably preferred. All right. Also, make sure that you have show all brackets visibility. That allows you to... Oh, I guess that doesn't even do that for the lightning bolts. Oh, well, whatever. So you can see I manually lock the Garmer, and then I use a passive targeter, or the auto targeter, to lock the rest of them. Still doesn't work for the shuttle, which reminds me I was going to do a special thing for that, which we can see if I can do it right now. Can I make a new tab? Add tab. Shit. All right, I'll do it after the fight. Somebody remind me to do it after the fight. I want to make an overview that is just for the shuttles. So that way we can grab those in isolation, because those are the only ones that you have to manually lock because they don't attack you. Definitely chewing through them fast enough. Ravenous Enraged. There's Newts. Kill that first. I'm at 130 seconds. I mean, the Gallente are compromised. I mean, the Gallente are corrupt. That's probably true. But it might be fun to think about like all of the theories of how the Gallente could be compromised, right? Because like, is this old school black, Mentis Black, and the Federalists or whatever, like the conspiracy, like the Gallente shadow government conspiracy, or is it the Gallente are secretly working with the Deathless this whole time through Leopold, or is it that the Gallente are compromised through their relationships with one of the pirate groups, other pirate groups? Are the Caldari compromised by Sancha? Like, there's a lot of interesting little... I mean, like, maybe we should do I should do another iceberg or whatever, or go over the iceberg again. Update it. Because there's a lot of fun little conspiracy theories. Like, it's not just, is the Gallente corrupted? It's how is the Gallente corrupted? All I'm saying is that the Gallente were not targeted by the Gallente, by the Drifter attack vector. Well, in the end, nobody got attacked, but you could argue that the plan got thwarted, I suppose. We're going to be getting up on the, I think the double spawn point, so I'm going to pull this up. Oh, I guess not. Oh, shit. I selected everything but the Garmer that time. That was well done. Shuttle. Yeah, I'm falling down behind a little bit, and there's going to be the double spawn soon. Actually, grab that one instead. There it is. So we're going to kill that. And then we kill him. And then we stabilize a little bit. I need to reload soon. We're at 300 seconds, 318, 320. It is true with that loss of EM, I can't ignore the ventures either. They're not nearly as damaging, but I can't ignore them either. But I will use this opportunity when there's only one left to reload real quick. Hey, I'm actually like all caught up. I really think that this turret booster, like that 8% tracking, is definitely putting in some work. Serpentis focused on Gallente after ore fallout. Well, yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of little questions about whose loyalty is with who right now. I think the last thing that I remember... No. Who used the Serpentis? I think... Was the Serpentis working with SOE and the Thucker to get out the Alpha Clone technology? Is that something I remember something about that? Because wasn't it them using Serpentis as one of their like smugglers was the reason why they got compromised? Isn't that in Sine Wave Alpha? Am I just hallucinating? Yeah. I'm pretty sure Serpentis were involved with the SOE with the Project Ascension. And they're the ones that... I don't remember now. I know that there was a concern because the Gallente are considered to be like... by the underground, the Gallente are considered to be like the least... or like the most compromised, or more importantly, the worst at actually executing clandestine things. I remember there was like the biggest concern that they had was that the Gallente were going, like the involvement of the Gallente was going to like expose the situation too quickly. Oh. All right, well, this is actually a little bit spooky, but hopefully it'll be fine. We've got some time. I've got 100 seconds to clean this up. Oh shit, I'm also moving. Fuck. Stop. No, why am I webbed? No! Fucking damn it. I hate it here. I feel bad. I feel like I wasted a site. All right, well, fuck. All right, well, suck. 11 AU. There's another one. You leave and go back, it won't respawn from the start minus the boom capacitors. If you leave and go back, won't it respawn from the start minus the boom capacitors? I don't think so. Is that actually what happens? I'm pretty sure the site's just burned, right? Don't do that. Why would I do that? Like I've gone into some and they've restarted, but there was no cap explosive things? Maybe, but I very much do not want to try to do that. Locking all the wrong things. All right, well, whatever. I didn't personally leave and go back. It's just shown up. I mean, we can test it. When we're done with this site, we can go to the other one again. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I can run the site without those explosion barrels. That would be spooky. Also, I do agree with whoever it was it Thrans or somebody, who is commenting about the fact that these are not red barrels, and that's insulting to game design. Am I moving? No. Why am I still moving? Move. Do not move. Stop moving. We're at 134 seconds. Shuttle. Gotta roll. Good luck. All right, Punch. Thanks for dropping by. Or thanks for hanging out. And for the skin. And in spirit of Punch, if you have ever played Raid Shadow Legends and don't mind coming back into it, our clan is recruiting and could use you. I'm not telling you that you should play Raid Shadow Legends. I'm just saying if you do, come join us. I'm going to wait to figure out which side I want to lock. Reload real quick. We're at 230 seconds. All right. Getting ready for the next, for the first Orthros wave. That wasn't it. Come on, keep shooting. There's the Orthros wave. Lock that one up. And fire. It's going to get rid of a lot of them. Whee! Not enough of them, though. Let's hope this Orthros dies quick. Oh my god, and I'm being nuded out. So much bad happening all at once. I might have to miss a shuttle, but we'll see. I may just have to leave. Hell no. No! Let's see if I can get the shuttle. Yes, I know. Now let's see if I can get the Ravenous Garmer. Get that newt gone. Okay. So now I need to get my resistances up, but I need to get cap first. Didn't mean to actually scoop that, making more mistakes. Let's get our resistances back online. We're fine. We're fine. See how fine we are? That's not even a Ravenous. We're going to kill you. And you. We're at 400 seconds, so second major wave is going to come in about 100 seconds, so I've got plenty of time. Actually going to turn off this other hardener to get even more cap back. My goal is to get my cap to above 30% before the next spawn. Shuttle doesn't count as the next spawn. That is the next spawn. So my repper goes back on. Or my hardener, rather. You guys are going to just have to hear my hardener whine. Oh my god, I almost didn't get the shuttle. Am I going to get the shuttle? Please get the shuttle. Okay, I've yet to lose a single shuttle in any of these sites. Knock on wood. We're almost the 500-second mark, so I'm going to get ready for the next big spawn. There it is. Give it a second or two. And pop it. We're going to overheat our hardener while we shoot down the Orthrus. And then we clean things up. And we're good to go. Clean. There you go. Easy peasy. Definitely not as chill as the Class 2 sites. There's a little bit of excitement in there. I could probably still improve this setup a little bit better, but especially with that tier 2 or that tier 3 drug that I'm taking from the event, like that is definitely all I need to be able to at least accomplish these sites. Theoretically speaking, something could go horribly wrong, and you know, you can get nuded out and scrammed or warp disrupted at the same time. So it's certainly not like 100% safe, but you know, it's a little bit more exciting. And now they're in high sec. I kind of like that because that means that there's going to be a lot of reason for people to not go after the Class 3s, which means there's going to be less competition for them. There's going to be people that just assume that Class 2s are good enough for them. I think that might be it. Even if there's one more shuttle, I'm just going to have to slow burn to it probably, but I don't think there is going to be one more shuttle. And no. There it is. Somebody said that the Null Prime Squall does more damage than the other one. I mean, that might be true, but it's certainly not, like, enough to be too terrifying for this fit. Maybe if I went into it, like, less than 50% shields, it'd be enough to push me over the edge. But honestly, the Null Prime Squall doesn't have me nearly as scared as those Orthrus waves. And I think that this is going to be probably the last site. So thank you guys for hanging out with us today. If you like the stream, make sure to like the stream. If you like what I do, please consider subscribing or even becoming a member or a patron, and help support this channel and what it does, and share it with friends and other places, and court mates. Karura Deathglow skin. Okay. Okay. Thanks, CCP. That's the other ship I'm never going to fly. All right. Last thoughts, anybody? Last discussion points? Anything worth talking about? I'm going to continue to be doing the event sites. Obviously, I've gotten 90 points today. We've got 450 points to get in a week to do it in. We might try. I might stream some more this week. Tomorrow, I'm almost certainly not going to be streaming. Like I said, I hope to work on other things during that time, and hopefully have a presentation for you later. But we'll probably do some more of the Crimson Harvest stuff. Let me know if you guys are interested in me showing, like, doing stuff more at class 3s, or trying the Tetramon or Blood Raider sites, see if there's anything interesting there, etc., etc. But I've been Ashrothi. I've been playing this game since 2010, talking about it since 2012, and I'm here to put even into context for you, my fellow Empyreans. Thank you guys so much for coming. And a special thank you to all of my top tier supporters, including 745 MPSI, Arydanika the Queen, Bad Boy Smooth, Ebo Elite, Erladis, Elange, Flasher Gordon, May, Malak Starfire, Malin, Mercuton, Mayak, Neelam, LM1, Sheesh, Susuro, and Rid. Thank you all so much. And until next time, I've been Ashrothi, and I'll see you in space.
Bring on the wrecking machine.
Now I want CCP to post numbers of how many consortium capital tractor beams were destroyed by people not picking them up.